Now, I'll say this from the start. I don't have a problem with Anthony Mackie. I think he does a great job as Sam Wilson, and I think that Harrison Ford is a good replacement for the deceased William Hurt as Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross. And they make fun of it at one point when Sam confronts, or rather meets with President Ross and says, you know, he is still trying to get used to the missing mustache, the new look. And that's obviously what Ross had before in the previous films that he was in, especially Civil War, which is ironic at the end when Ross is in the raft where Sam was once before in Captain America Civil War. And there are a couple interesting tropes that also happen in this movie. In particular, you have Captain America just badgering the president to try and get something out of him, and you know it's going to happen. You know Ross is going to pop and can say, I was dying, damn it. I had heart failure and I needed gamma radiation pills in order to save my life. And obviously, lo and behold, we have the villain at halfway through the movie, which is a problem, I think. You know, if you have a very shortened movie and you don't really see the villain halfway through it, that's a problem. And I think Samuel Stearns is a weak villain, Mr. Blue, as he's called as well in the comics. I didn't really like him. And I think the Serpent Society, which it's just like a bad take of saying, you know, Hydra, right? I think they were pretty weak. I think Giancarlo Esposito being utilized as a villain like Sidewinder, who sounds like the name of a G.I. Joe character, was underutilized. And I think Giancarlo could have been used at some point in the future as an MCU character. I don't think this was it. I think this is a bit of a miscast and a misuse, maybe is the better term here. The issues with the plot is that it's just very underwhelming. And I think that the use of Isaiah Bradley could have just been completely washed. I think he could have been, you know, removed from the film entirely, and everything else that happens in the movie would have still happened the same way. It's just this unnecessary involvement and kind of making him look bad, as if he's like, well, we're going to put the blame on him because, you know, he has reasons to hate America and hate the government and hate, you know, the president and so forth, for, you know, President Thunderbolt Ross's prior history and being a, you know, wartime general and so forth. And I think they could have just stood him in as a cameo. And then here's what I would have preferred to see here. Instead of Joaquin being the new Falcon, as I'm sure he will be at some point, I would have preferred to see Isaiah Bradley's grandson, Eli Bradley, as Patriot, be the sidekick to Sam. And obviously there's the talk about what happens between Sam and Bucky once Bucky finally makes that cameo as well, which I kind of figured would happen. And the interesting thing about that whole story is what makes Sam think that he could have followed in Steve's footsteps. As he states, who stopped 2 alien invasions that we know of in the Avengers movies, and he regrets, Sam that is, taking this serum. And obviously it would have helped him with certain adversaries, especially in the end fight in this movie with Rulk. I do think Bucky is wrong here, because I think Bucky forgets how much the super soldier serum has helped him out, even in the wrong ways. I think in terms of Sam taking it, I think he would have been able to protect more people, because I think Steve Rogers was able to protect and help a great deal of people through his involvement from, you know, World War II. And once he was, you know, brought back into the new world with the first Avengers film, I think Bucky was wrong there in that instance in this conversation with Sam. Even for the sake of looking at U.S. Agent, you know, he was able to take the serum, and it did give him an advantage. And I'm sure we're going to see more of that in the Thunderbolts movie. It's like the idea, do you think Steve Rogers would have been able to do as well as he did, you know, when he fought Ultron, or especially when he fought Thanos? You know, imagine a non-super soldier serum induced Steve Rogers trying to 1v1 Thanos, even with wielding Mjolnir. Like, yes, he does have the power of Thor, but therein, like, after he doesn't have Mjolnir, how well would he actually been going toe-to-toe with Thanos? And I think the character of Sam Wilson is quite good. I think, you know, he does have similar qualities of Steve Rogers because he hung around and spent time with Steve Rogers. And like most things, if you spend time around good people, you in turn kind of get their good habits. You understand what drives them. And Sam understands through prior movies what made Steve tick and what made Steve do the things he did. And that's something that I do believe in the MCU stance, where Steve saw something in Sam to do that. But I know I'm not the only person here that would think that Bucky should have gotten the shield. Even in the comics, Bucky received the shield and held the shield for 7 years prior to Sam Wilson holding it. And in that time, Eli Bradley, Isaiah Bradley's grandson, was the sidekick to a shield-wielding Bucky Barnes as Captain America, because that's what Steve would have wanted him to do. So even Bucky had that thought in mind. And even when Captain America Rebirth happens and Steve comes back, there's something that Bucky says that, hits home and is very, very true. He states in the comics, there's only one Cap, and it's Steve Rogers. And sure, that's when Steve came back and Bucky was there, so you can't have two Steve Rogers at the same time, because that's something that Black Widow set up as a proposal. Hey, why don't you both be Cap? And that's obviously when Bucky says, no, we can't do that. In the movie, it doesn't make sense where Bucky is going to be a future congressman, a politician. It's honestly just crazy to put those words together with Bucky Barnes. It would have made more sense for Sam, who served time in the military for his country, to go that same route. It's almost like, Colonel Rhodes, who, granted, it's the Skrull version, so yeah, kind of got a little screwed there, but I digress. They still offered that position to him to be more involved in politics and at least kind of have a more leadership role, as opposed to suiting up all the time, which that'll be interesting to see how the real Rhodey comes back and wonders what the hell's been going on this entire time, if that's the route they're going to go with the MCU. I think it would have been very poetic to see Bucky raise the shield, because he went through some rehabilitation in Wakanda, and then he gets titled the White Wolf from King T'Challa. And if T'Challa believed in him that much, perhaps we should too, in him being Captain America. But obviously, we're not the ones writing the film. We're not the ones that are coming up with these ideas and trying to table them and to try and think of something that actually makes sense plot-wise, character development-wise, and seemingly in the whole MCU continuity, which I think is just a mess between Phase 4 and Phase 5 going into Phase 6 here. And I just want to say, I think the show Falcon and Winter Soldier was very poorly written, aside from showing us what Wyatt Russell kind of brought to the table and will continue to bring to the table once we see him in Thunderbolts. And, I know there's this controversy around him killing a terrorist with the shield and, bashing the guy's head in, and he was unarmed, but, again, he's still a terrorist, and there's blood on the shield, and someone says, did Steve Rogers ever kill someone? He actually did. Even in the comics, in issue number 254, he kills Baron Blood with the shield. Now, granted, he was a vampire, but still an enemy, and someone that needed to be stopped. And Steve did what he had to do to get the job done, thus killing something and getting blood on the shield. This idea of the mind control, I think if mutants were a thing, that would have made a little bit more sense. Even Isaiah Bradley being, brainwashed by the simple playing of music and or screen flashings from a cell phone, it just seems really weak and just so plot convenient for them to go, we'll just write this in and say, look at the phone, it's brainwashing people. Yeah, okay, sure. And then, hey, look, we have an ex-widow or ex-Red Room, 5-foot female in the fold again, which I think her character was irrelevant, didn't really have much to do with the plot, even though she was, supposed to be there for President Ross. What did she really do? I mean, she didn't even really Joaquin and Sam Wilson when they were getting arrested. Of course, that's when the music starts playing and they're like, run, we got to get away here. Now, speaking of Sam using the shield, some of the CGI in this movie just seemed a bit wonky. When they're flying around the Celestial, some of the explosions, the fight at the end with Rolk and the White House destruction. There's just something weird about when Sam's throwing the shield too, and not so much the ricocheting, but it's the speed and the fluidity at which it travels. Go back and watch Steve Rogers in any of the movies that he's in throw the shield, and you'll notice a difference. Something just seems off about it. I don't know if it's just the different people working on the CGI, or if they're trying to maybe slow it down a bit because Sam doesn't have the super soldier serum and whereas Steve does. Maybe they're just trying to throw some sort of velocity thing in there and that's their maybe execution with the CGI. I don't know. That's just what my eyes saw and my brain thinks. A couple things that I don't know how some of the people didn't see. The one woman who comes to see Ross under the ship and he's literally like bending the pipe. She didn't see that. And then when the two men are in the room and he slams his desk on marble, which is quite durable, and it cracks, neither one of them see that and raise the question like, whoa, how did President Ross just literally crack a marble desk or marble tabletop, whatever it happens to be? No one saw that. Okay. Now, I will say when Ross turns into the Hulk, the transformation was cool. I think the look of Rolk was well done. I have no problems with that. And it was honestly cool to see, him jumping and leaping super far distances and kind of seeing that accuracy, displaying his rage that Red Hulk is supposed to have, the amount of destruction and sheer strength as well. And when the military or part of the military comes in and starts shooting him, it's like they should have known, or at least Ross should have known, just in the instance of something happening, they have something bigger and better firepower. And oh gosh, wouldn't it have been lovely if they had a Hulkbuster, standing somewhere, maybe at the White House or somewhere in military hands. And obviously, since Tony Stark is no longer with us, perhaps they could have used some sort of technology to mimic that, or maybe use Rhodey to somehow get their hands on something bigger, better, develop something similar to the Hulkbuster, but they have not. Now, the fight at the end, which obviously it's disappointing to see Red Hulk be in the screen for maybe 5 minutes total. There's a part where Hulk hits Sam as Sam is using his vibranium wings and the shield to kind of stand his ground, even though he's more like kneeling. He takes 16 punches, if I remember correctly, which is a lot. And in the comics, having Steve Rogers take one punch from the Hulk, and sure, it didn't break the shield, but man, it absolutely crushed him and it hurt. The fact that Sam is able to take 16 durable punches, sure, he's a lot of vibranium protecting him, but that's just like his suit being literal plot armor. And that is a problem. And I get that's why they wrote it, because, well, if they're not going to have Sam take the serum, we got to give him something else in instead. The gift from Wakanda for him helping them out. Now, I will say, when Sam gets caught and Rolk rips his wing off and then just kind of catches the shield with the no-look and slams it down, that was kind of cool. We did see that in one of the teaser trailers some time ago, but it was still kind of a cool scene to see. The other gripe I have is the Celestial. And obviously, them trying to write something around the Celestial, because the Eternals movie that wasn't very good at all. It's definitely one of the weaker movies in the entirety of the MCU. I think it came in at the wrong place, the wrong time of the MCU period. And the fact that they're using this as the factor, the catalyst to bring in the one and the most strongest substance material, adamantium. And the fact that you don't have the one character that is notorious for having and using adamantium, Wolverine. Yes, we saw him with Deadpool, but they're not in the MCU. Not yet. So how is that going to work out when the MCU, with whatever happens next, if they somehow find a way to also have adamantium left over through Secret Wars and Doomsday, whatever happens there, is Wolverine going to go, oh, you guys have adamantium? Yeah, well, be careful about that, because it's poisonous if you kind of have it within your body. And also, how widespread are they going to make it? Because in the movie, they show that they can use it for a lot of different things and a lot of fields, a lot of genres to help out and to help build society together. And obviously, there's this celestial treaty so that, India, France, Japan, United States, like they can't all harvest it for themselves. Like it has to kind of be shared or not touched at all. Now, some of the fighting also kind of seems a little wonky, like in the beginning where Sam is fighting with Seth Rollins and gets his suit cut. I guess, that part's not vibranium, but gets thrown through the table. And so does that mean because he doesn't have his wings out, that means he can't absorb the energy? It just kind of seems weird. I would imagine they would have given him an entire suit of vibranium, which would have been even better since he didn't take the serum. But I guess beggars can't be choosers, and you live with the decisions you make. So for the ending of this movie, with Ross being on the raft, kind of curious as to see how he's going to break out or get released going into the Thunderbolts movie, if that's how they connect the two. You can't call it Thunderbolts without him kind of being involved. I guess we'll kind of see. I'm almost assuming it's going to be Valerie that somehow finds a way to get him out and to make him, lead. I think in terms of the characters in this movie and what they go through, I think Sam has some internal conflict based on having to follow the footsteps of Steve Rogers. And, is he really up to the task? Can he do a good job? Can he, lead people the same way Steve Rogers did and bring that inspiration, bring that hope, and really make a difference? Perhaps the fact that Thunderbolt Ross wants to bring the Avengers back and mentions that to Sam Wilson, we know it's going to happen because of Doomsday. And I'm sure something's going to happen in that movie that causes him to go, hey, I need to get back to as many people as possible. It'll be interesting. Overall, if I have to give this movie a rating, it's not good. I'm sorry. If you like it, I'd like to hear why. I really would. I'm not going to diss on you, but leave a comment as to why you liked it, and we'll have a discussion that way. My rating is going to be probably like a 4.5 out of 10. I think it is the weakest of the Captain America movies. I went back and I watched the first Avenger movie, and I think that has a better plot line. It has more significance for the character of Captain America, and of course it is Steve Rogers, so it is hard to do that. It's like an uphill battle that Sam Wilson is pitted against, and that's on the writers. I don't think it's Anthony Mackie's fault. I don't think it's Harrison Ford's fault or Giancarlo Esposito's fault. I think it's the writers, and obviously I think Kevin Feige is ultimately responsible for everything, as I think he's missed the grand picture, and dare I say, phases 1 through 3, he was very lucky in how everything panned out, especially with all the actors and the characters and the people that were directing them as well, that had a good idea of how to tell a story. There were some outliers in bad movies, with maybe Iron Man 3, Thor 2, Ant-Man 2. If you want to throw some others in there yourself, by all means. A lot of those movies in those phases were good, if not great. And obviously that's why we fell in love with the MCU in that era, and why it's the complete opposite now. We'll have to see what happens in the upcoming movies. There's going to be a lot of weight that falls on Fantastic Four, Thunderbolts, and of course Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars. If you like anything I had to say in this video, I would appreciate it if you hit the like button, subscribe for more content, hit the bell for future notifications on videos, and drop a comment if you have anything positive or negative to say about this movie, and we'll try to have a conversation that way. I'll catch you next time here on The Plot Strikes Back for more reviews, breakdowns, and analysis. Cheers, everyone.